Imperial Perspectives in Comparative Literature. What is imperialism? We have got the definition of imperialism. That is, imperialism is the control of the powerful country to the less powerful country. That is imperialism. But what is cultural imperialism? If anybody of any country wants to dominate other country on the basis of culture, that is called cultural imperialism. In case of comparative literature, we discuss that is Anne Bradstreet, that actually Bradstreet, she was American writer, and she published his work in Britain, and for this reason she was not considered wisely. Next time we have talked about Macaulay, okay, the British historian. He said that actually the African and Indian literature and culture is not good, okay. And next time we have got that idea, that is Edward Fitzgerald, and he translated the Rubaiyat of Umar Khayyam. That is a Persian text that was translated in English. And the belief in superiority of their own culture was prevalent in European writers and writings. Okay, that the belief of superiority of their own culture was a part of politics of imperialism. That means their culture is great and other culture is not great. Okay. Other culture, that means African, Arabian cultures and literature are called primitive or childlike. Okay. And also dismiss their art forms in various ways. That means their art, culture and literature were treated primitive or childlike, and the form of art they are producing, the way they were writing their literature, that was not considered well by the European writers and critics. And at the same time, and also so the existence of the tradition of the oral epics, for example, was considered insignificant. Oral epic, we know there are primary epic and secondary epic. Primary epics are oral epic, the oral tradition. There is no one claimed to be the writer of that oral epic. And in European condition, they said that this oral tradition of epic are insignificant. They are not considered to be an important part of literature. According to what? According to the belief of the superiority of their own culture and literature. Okay? Homer and the Greeks, the plays of Shakespeare, the poetry of Spenser and Milton, these were the texts against which the other works were measured and found wanting. So in one hand, in European, Roman and Greek perspectives, we have Homer, Greeks, Shakespeare, Spenser, Milton. So that was the giant figure of European literary tradition. And apart from that, the other tradition, that means the African, Indian and Arabian text and literature, they are considered, that is, they are primitive or childlike. So that attitude, that is, our literature is great, our culture is great, that is called imperial perspectives in comparative literature. Imperialism in terms of power, that means one country will be dominating the power. But in terms of culture and in terms of literature, if I say that our literature is the greatest and the other literatures are primitive or childish, That means I or anybody wants to dominate other literature and other culture. That is called the imperialistic perspectives in comparative literature. So this crux of the problem was one of the perception of Shakespeare that was taken in India. Was a writer who was depicted as being the embodiment of English virtue and virtuosity. Okay, that means William Shakespeare. That is, watching and reading William Shakespeare plays and dramas and poetry, we want to judge. That is, through William Shakespeare we can evaluate the virtue of the English. That means the people of England. Okay, in which way? That means in William Shakespeare writing we have seen so many cultural tradition of the England, the values of the England, the cultural values we have perceived, the cultural values of England we have perceived through the study of William Shakespeare plays and dramas. That was the position. Shakespeare was the great master. Shakespeare, the supreme English writer. Shakespeare, the epitome of Englishness, epitome in Englishness. So what we see in William Shakespeare, through that we can get the virtuous quality of English and the Englishman. So through William Shakespeare writing we can understand the Englishness. How? The existence of an alternative pictures, but how William Shakespeare is taken by the others. That is the matter. They wanted to portray, that means the Englishman, the colonial power, they wanted to portray William Shakespeare, the great writer, the greatest of all writers. Okay, but there is another side of William Shakespeare's evaluation. What is that? The revolutionary poet whose plays about the disposition of unjust rulers. Okay, so we have seen in William Shakespeare plays that is many rulers were assassinated. Okay, assassinated, that means that was the history of England. Okay, King Thane of Cawdor, the goddess is behind. In King Lear we have said that King Lear, in Othello we have said assassination, murder and killing. In Hamlet we have also seen the aspect of revolution. Hamlet was killed by his brother, senior Hamlet, and next time Hamlet revolt for his father's killing. Okay, for the justice of his father's killing. So the revolutionary attitude against the unjust ruler, that was the epitome of English culture. And what happened that? And were staged across the Europe in cities and seething with revolutionary energy was not permissible. Actually, whenever people of Europe watched William Shakespeare's drama with the revolution, same kind of revolutionary attitude prevailed in the other part of Europe. It means that the Hamlet, the way Hamlet was killed, junior Hamlet, যেভাবে হ্যামলেটকে খুন করা হলো, এই ড্রামা পড়ে ইউরোপের অন্য দেশগুলোর মধ্যে এই রাজা হত্যা মানে কিংকে হত্যা করার যে অ্যাটিটিউড, এটা আবার কি হলো, গ্রো করলো. That means after starting a literature, many European countries and in many states of the Europe, they had such kind of negative tendency of killing the kings on the perspective of revolution. So in one hand, William Shakespeare is the epitome of Englishness, but in another hand, the revolutionary attitude in William Shakespeare's dramas that inspired other writers or other countries to have negative impact on their mentality and culture. So William Shakespeare is great from the perspectives of England, but is not great from the perspectives of the other country or from the other city. Okay. So, and with the expectation, so such kind of revolutionary attitude is not permissible. Okay, but William Shakespeare is the great writer. But with the exportation of the idealized Shakespeare came all the evils of colonialism. Another point is that through the aspect of William Shakespeare, we have got the evils of colonialism. We have said that colonialism, for the perspectives of colonialism, many country was dominated. Many country lost their tradition, culture, language, everything, and sovereignty as well. First time they lost their sovereignty. That means তাদের স্বাধীনতা ক্ষুণ্ণ করেছে ইংল্যান্ডের দ্বারা, তারা colonizing country, and next time they have lost their literature, culture and tradition. So that is the evils of colonialism. What is the evils of colonialism? When England, East India Company dominated the Indian subcontinent, placing 4 ports in India, that is East India Company, Kolkata, Madras, Chennai and Bombay. There are the only 3 trading posts, and they dominated the sovereignty of Indian subcontinent. And after that, what happened? They also dominated their culture. They also dominated their language. They also dominated their business and economy. So these are the evils of colonialism. These are the evils of colonialism in case of literary imperialism. So which let Jawaharlal Nehru draw an ironic contrast of between what called the 2 Englands. So what is the 2 Englands? One England is the greatest country, one hand, and another hand, England brought the evils of colonialism. Have you got what kind? 2 England. One England, they are the virtuous country, they are the ideal country, their literature is great, they have the democratic ideology, they have the other things in their culture, that is the great England, one hand. Another England, England brought the evils of colonialism. Colonialism, that means they dominated their sovereignty, they dominated their language, culture and everything. That is 2 Englands. What did Jagannath Nehru say? Which one of these 2 Englands came to India? When India was dominated by England, we have perceived that there are 2 views on England. So which England came to India? The England of Shakespeare and Milton. That is, reading William Shakespeare and Milton, we have perceived the great virtue of English. So that England came to India. Of noble speech, writing or brave deed of political revolution and the struggle for freedom and of science, struggle for freedom, the advancement of science and also the technical progress. So science, locomotive, electric bulb, they are also the patents they developed in England, but the citizens, they were also from the other parts of this world. But they stayed in England and they developed the scientific advancement, the technological advancement, the other advancement. So which England came to India? The technological advancement, or the England, the Savage Penal Code? Savage Penal Code, that means Penal Code, the judicial system, DC, District Commissioner, the word is taken from England. Okay. Before that, there was no District Commissioner, there was no judge, there was no Penal Code. So Penal Code, everything they got within India. So that is England. The Savage Penal Code, brutal behavior, and the entrenched feudalism, that is the Shamanta Protha, the Jegin Chash, যেটা ওনারা করেছিলেন, রেল চাষ, তার মধ্যে যে একটা কর দেওয়ার যে সংস্কৃতি, feudalism, that means there will be a feudal lord in one side, and the feudal lord will be paid with some tax. So tax, feudal lord, Savage Penal Code, all brought to India by England. So Jawaharlal Nehru asked, which England came to India? Okay. And for this, were the 2 Englands. Just as in every country, there are these 2 aspects of national character and civilization. So in case of every literature and civilization, we have these 2 kinds. One, the great things, and another, the negative things or the opposite things in colonialism. Like Macaulay said that the Arabian literature and the Indian literature, they are childish. So men like Macaulay, liberal intellectuals, were a genuine belief in the superiority of their own culture. So not only the Macaulay, other intellectual, they thought that their culture is great, their literature is great. Okay, and in this thinking, their own culture and a vision of the world that involved strict hierarchies based on class. Not only that, they wanted to have a distinction among the world civilization and the world people based on what? Based on caste, class, race and color. In one hand, they thought that our literature and culture is great, and not only that, that intellectuals developed or divided people on the basis of race, color and class. So the class division was there. And engaging in comparison. So such kind of division will be engaged in comparison. We are studying the imperial perspectives of colonial comparative literature. How imperialism made division among people, literature, culture and everything. And that division and that comparison will be compared in comparative literature. The problem was that they inevitably compared negatively. No problem is there. Of course, there would be a division based on color and class. Okay, but the problem is that actually, on the basis of the color, skin color and race, some person and some literature, they are treated negatively. That is the question. That question cannot be unanswered. And some literature was worth less than others. Obviously, they thought so. And some are unique in having universal importance. Our literature is unique. Why? Its appeal. It has a unique universal appeal, and for this reason our literature is great. Okay, division will be there, but they said that our literature is great. In which perspectives? With an universal perspectives, our literature is great. And the question of the universal value of an author and a work was fundamental to this colonist viewpoint, and for it enabled claims to be made that set works apart from all other consideration, arguing that a writer such as Shakespeare, for example, was on a higher plane than almost everyone else. So for such kind of colonialist viewpoint, William Shakespeare can be compared, that is in the upper position, just like a plane, and other writer of this globe, they are in the lower place in this world. So a far division between William Shakespeare and the writer of the other countries and the other part of this world. That is the comparison. Another critic, he said that actually at the time of William Shakespeare, some critics said that Ben Jonson was greater writer than William Shakespeare. Ben Jonson was considered to be the greater writer than William Shakespeare, according to many critics. At the time of colonialism, before the colonialism, because Ben Jonson was contemporary university wits. Ben Jonson was one of the university wits. So Ben Jonson writing, that was considered that Ben Jonson is greater than William Shakespeare. That idea was prevalent in England and in Europe. But what happened next? By the time William Shakespeare was being exported to India, so in England it was a view that Ben Jonson is greater than William Shakespeare. At that time William Shakespeare was exported. William Shakespeare লেখাকে কোথায় এক্সপোর্ট করা হলো? ইন্ডিয়াতে এক্সপোর্ট করা হলো। তো যখন একটা সাহিত্য অন্য দেশে যাবে তখন তার রিডার বেড়ে যায়। So what happened then? William Shakespeare was being exported to India and the other colonies in the mid-19th century, and his compatriots regarded his universal greatness as a matter of fact. So after the exportation of William Shakespeare in the colonial countries, William Shakespeare got the greater evaluation. যখন ইন্ডিয়া এবং অন্যান্য কলোনিয়াল কান্ট্রিগুলোর মধ্যে উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ারকে কি করা হলো? রপ্তানি করা হলো। কারা রপ্তানি করলো? ইংল্যান্ড কলোনিয়াল কান্ট্রি, তারা সেই দেশে যখন পাঠালো তখন উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ার রাইটিং বিকাম দ্য গ্রেট। But if we just William Shakespeare writing and Ben Jonson writing, it is the view of the contemporary critic of William Shakespeare and Ben Jonson, they said that Ben Jonson was greater than William Shakespeare. That is their idea. But when William Shakespeare writing was exported to the other part of this world, then William Shakespeare got the greatest position of this world. So that is what we are discussing. We are discussing at the imperial perspectives, how a literature can dominate other literature, how a literature of a country can dominate other literature of a country. That is the imperial perspectives of comparative literature. Another, cultural colonialism. I have talked a little bit in previous class. That is cultural colonialism. Cultural colonialism, that means what is culture nowadays? What is our national dress? Our national dress is, what is our national dress? আমাদের জাতীয় ড্রেস কি? না, ছেলেদের জন্য কুর্তা, কি যেন এই কুর্তা মতো একটা, আর হলো অনেকে লুঙ্গিও বলে, অনেকে পাজামা বলে, পায়জামা যেটা, কিন্তু আমরা এখন পড়ি, আমরা পড়ি হলো প্যান্ট। আজকে কি পায়জামা পড়েছে? পায়জামা পড়েছে? ঈদের সময় আমরা নামাজ পড়তে যাওয়ার সময় পড়ি। কেন? বিকজ দে হ্যাভ গিভেন ইউ দ্য আইডিয়া that pant is very much comfortable and it is very easy and it is very good to use. So when that notion is inserted in your brain, from that time you started using pant, leaving your pajamas. Okay, that is called cultural colonialism. That means our culture, that is fooding habit, clothing habit, traffic systems and other all systems are good and better, so accept this. Whenever you will accept some other country's culture, naturally you will forget your culture. If you do not forget, at least you will not maintaining that culture. That is, through the culture, if a country wants to dominate other country, that is called cultural colonialism. Was also a form of comparative literature. Okay, so cultural colonialism, in that writers were imported by the colonizing group and native writers were evaluated negatively in comparison. So that was the pictures described in comparative literatures. Okay, so for comparatives through the 19th century kept insisting that comparison took place on horizontal axis. Then they said, okay, imperial perspectives will be compared, will be the issues of comparative literature. Cultural colonialism will be the issue of comparison. Okay, but in which way that will be the comparison? They said that the comparison will be horizontal axis among the equals. Who are the equals? They said that actually European literature will be compared with European literature. The parallel. যুদ্ধ তো হবে সমানে সমান। তারা তো ইউরোপের কালচার এবং লিটারেচার বাদ দিয়ে অন্য কালচারদের তাদেরকে তারা কি করছে না, ভালোভাবে মূল্যায়ন করছে না। এই জন্য তারা এই পার্সপেক্টিভসে বলল যে ইয়াস, কম্পারিজন উইল বি দেয়ার বিটুইন প্যারালালস উইথ হোয়াট, দ্যাট মিনস ইউরোপিয়ান লিটারেচার উইল বি কম্পেয়ার্ড উইথ ইউরোপিয়ান লিটারেচার। And the prevalence of this attitude is attested by the fact that it has still not disappeared in the minds and the syllabus of many contemporary comparatives. In 1967, for example, C.L. Wren gave the presidential address of the Modern Humanities Research Association in Chicago and next time London after 2 weeks, entitled The Idea of Comparative Literature, in which he suggested that clearly fundamental differences in pattern of thinking among people must impose relatively narrow limits. An African language, for example, is incompatible with the European one. So Wren, in his lecture 2 times, first time in Chicago and next time in London, he said that African language cannot be comparable with European language and literature. Why? What is the issue? They said that comparison will be done among parallels. That means European literature will be compared with European literature. So African literature and language will not be compared with European literature. Who said that? Wren in 1967. And even Sanskrit. though itself is the Indo-European language, along with the Indian ramification, presents a pattern of thought which renders any sort of literary translation of very limited value. So even they said that Sanskrit, it is Sanskrit. What type of language it is? The roots of Sanskrit is Indo-European. So we can call that is Sanskrit is a European-based language. But they say that no, that will not also be ramification. There are classification of Sanskrit. They said that so European literature and language will not be compared with Sanskrit and the other African and Caribbean and literature. Okay, that is their position. So he goes on to say that comparative study of Paradise Lost and Ramayana. So what will be happen? Ramayana is written in Sanskrit and Paradise Lost is written in English. So English is an European language and Ramayana Sanskrit, written in Sanskrit, can only discuss parallels, differences in subject matter and treatment at the expense of the poetry, and suggests that this is inhabitable because of the different nature of Sanskrit and the thought of other literatures. And the only proper object of the study of comparatists, he argues, that is European languages, medieval and modern. Okay. So, according to Wren, in his speech, that comparison will be done among parallels. Even Sanskrit will not become, Ramayana will not be compared with Paradise Lost. So, what would be the comparison? He said the comparison will be done in the European languages. So, in which language you can European languages in medieval period, European language in modern period, European literature of medieval time, European language of modern time. So such kind of comparison will have the attitude in imperialistic perspectives of comparative literature. Okay, and so that was the